Jesus Freak here. I've done a few videos in the past. They should all be tagged Retro Freak, so you should be able to find them that way. Um, Around the end of May 2020, I bought an old IBM PS2 Model 80. No, Model 3286. I don't know why I said 80. I knew it was 30. Um, when I was younger, I was about 14 at the time. I knew someone who had a PS2 Model 30, the original 30. I think I've mentioned this before. It had the Model M keyboard. It had the mouse, which I don't have. I have regular modern mouse connected. And it had the monitor, which is exactly the same one you see on my computer. Um, the thing about the Model 30 slash 286, which is why I picked this one, I had an XT, which is the basically the original PC with a few minor tweaks in the back. And I had bought it a few years before. It never worked right. So it just didn't feel right to me. There were some issues with the power supply. The hard drive was dead. I had to use a modern monitor with it. It just didn't feel right. So I bought this computer, which is honestly not much better, even though it's about 6 years newer. I bought it because it used more modern parts. It's easier to upgrade, it's easier to fix. There's still some potential issues. Um, Floppy drive is non standard, the hard drive is proprietary. I believe there's ways to deal with that if something happens. Right now, they're in perfect shape, almost. So that's not that big a deal. It was a compromise, but one that made things a lot easier for me. I bought the system. I bought the original monitor, the same model that my friend had when I knew him as a kid. I bought the original keyboard. It had some missing keycaps, so I bought a new set of keycaps from Unicomp, who still make that model of keyboard. Um, Now, I give you a little bit of tech details. It's a 286 running at 10 megahertz. That's that wasn't much even back then, but you know the saying went at the time: nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. People bought it because it was the IBM brand. It was one of only two models that was somewhat normal for the PS2. because IBM decided they were going to try to take on the clone makers by creating a completely different standard. It backfired hard on them. Compaq wound up getting way ahead of them. Now it had a 3.5-inch high density floppy drive and a 20 meg hard drive. 20 meg hard drive is nothing. So that's where a lot of my work came in. The original operating system would have come with it is probably PC-DOS 4.01. PC-DOS 4 and MS-DOS 4, they're exactly the same, are a flaming pile of dog dung. I installed PC-DOS 7. Which is a lot more to my taste, a lot more familiar to me, a lot more comfortable. I also installed a few other things. Nothing major, just utilities. And when I got it, it worked almost perfectly with one exception. It couldn't save the system settings. That's not that big a deal. I had ways to save it on the hard drive instead. I did a video about that. But when I looked on the inside, I realized the clock chip, Dallas 1287, I knew these were pretty infamous, but not as infamous as the other solution they had for keeping time on computers, which was to, they had a different kind of chip that was backed up by I believe, nickel metal hydride battery. And these batteries, which were made by a company called Varda, were pretty infamous. I mean, they worked fine for the computer's intended lifespan. But as they started to die, as the batteries started to die, they'd spew caustic gunk all over the motherboard. This is why in the retro computing world we call them Varda bombs, because that caustic gunk would actually eat away at the motherboard and permanently destroy the computer. You'll see some videos where people are actually able to salvage them, but it's a lot of work. They basically have to completely rebuild that part of the motherboard. So I'm glad that they used the Dallas chip instead. Now, one thing I had read about Dallas chips was that most companies that use the Dallas chips, they soldered them right onto the motherboard. Now, I don't have a soldering gun. I'm even leery to touch a soldering gun because I'm afraid of dealing with high heat. So I was a little worried to find out that the PS2 model 3286 use the Dallas chip. But I didn't have to be. They put it in a socket. So I actually ordered a new Dallas chip from a company called DigiKey. And I opened the computer. I didn't have a chip puller or anything properly to use it. I had a key puller that came with one of my keyboards. I said, you know what? I'll see if this works. It's designed to take a key out of keyboards. I used it and actually pulled a chip out of a socket with it. So I put in the new chip, worked just fine. I know there's some people that said that they'd had trouble using the 1287 Plus or whatever I was using in place of 1287. Works fine in this particular computer. Now, I did a few upgrades beyond this. The first thing I upgraded was I added a network card. This let me get it online within some limitations because it's only a 286. I can't surf the web with it. I can't go on Facebook. I can't go on Twitter. Obviously, I'm not watching YouTube videos on a 286. It's a 35-year-old computer. You're lucky you can do anything with it. But beyond that, it's capable of getting the date and time off of another computer on my network. And if I need to get software to it, I don't need to use floppy disks. I can download it off one of my servers. The next thing I added was an XTCF, which is a card that lets me install a compact flash card inside the computer. That took a little bit of experimenting to get it right. The default settings didn't play nice with my network card. I didn't realize that until someone told me. But with this card, I went from having just 20 megabytes of hard drive space to having 2 gigs. The third thing I added was a sound card. I mentioned this in the Monkey Island video. It's a Creative Sound Blaster Vibra 16XV. It's a cheap card. You can find them, the cheapest chips on eBay. I got 2 of them. Now, it's a decent sound card for what it is, but if you're expecting a real Yamaha chip in there for the synthesizer, you ain't getting it. Now, there are a few videos where you hear me do stuff with the Sound Blaster. I believe there was, I can't remember, I think it was 2020 Advent videos. Or it might have been one of the, I think it was actually one of the Christmas videos I did that had music in it. And the music was played back on that computer. Of course it sounds chintzy. Anything coming from that type of chip, OPL chip, is going to sound chintzy. It was recognizable. That was the point. I did another video, you can look it up, the Bad Apple video. You can see me playing an animation that was specifically encoded to play on an older computer. In fact, it would have run on my XT if I had it still. Now, the Monkey Island video, I did this for two reasons, actually. One of them was, hey, it's Talk Like a Pirate Day. Hey, arr! You know, and I wanted to do something for that. The other was, I was waiting for the opportunity to make a joke about fighting for the faith and how he uses the Monkey Island music in his outro sometimes. I don't know if he's a retro gamer or not. I can't imagine a Lutheran pastor being a retro gamer, but considering how old I am, and I'm still playing video games in my 40s, it's not out of the question for someone like Reverend Roseborough to be a retro gamer. I just thought maybe some people here who watch his videos, if there are any such people here, there might be some who, instead of recognizing it as the Monkey's Island music, recognize, hey, it's that music Fighting for the Faith plays in his outros. It was just a cheap gag. By the way, I've never played Monkey Island. I've never played any games from LucasArts except for the NES/Game Boy Star Wars and the first two parts of the Super Star Wars trilogy on the Super Nintendo, and there was a game called X-Wing that I played a little bit when I was like 13. So, just in case you were wondering where that last video came from, because it was kind of random, now you know. Jesus, freak out.